All right, it is time to talk about the series that I'm currently not planning to continue with for the foreseeable future. Although I do have two categories. I have these are kind of on pause, not priorities, but never say never. And then I have I really don't think I'm continuing with these series sort of category. So we'll start with the former and go into the latter. I don't remember the last time I did a video like this. It might have been 2 years ago. I have no clue. Just this year was a very mid for me in terms of picking up series. So I was like, yeah, I have a lot of series that I am not continuing with. In this first section, I think I have 6 series that are like on pause, not priorities. A lot of these could be considered like good palate cleansers or fillers between my long epic things, but I don't typically palate cleanse like that. I feel like typically my palate cleansing or my making sure I don't get stuck in a genre rut is reading many genres. So speculative fiction-wise, I read sci-fi, fantasy, getting into a little bit horror, spoopy, creepy side a little more equally. It's still primarily like 50-50 sci-fi fantasy, which are different enough that helps. And then, of course, there's the genre blendy stuff that we get these days. And then I read literary and historical fiction for my local book club. So I always have a pretty good blend of genres, so I don't usually need a lot of the longer series, palate cleansery, like mystery series or urban fantasy, cozy mystery. Like a lot of those don't make their way into my reading plans. And these were a bunch of series that I tried to see if these would be the things that make it into my reading plan that make me want to read them, and that hasn't really been the case. It's been over 6 months. I haven't prioritized them. I don't think I'm going to. So never say never. Maybe I will get into a mood where it's like, oh yeah, I would like to continue with this. It's been a minute. So that's the caveat for these first 6 in no particular order. We'll start with Murderbot. I've read the first 2 novellas. And I think they're fun. I think they're great. I mean, 4 stars, I think, for both of them, maybe 4.5 for the first one. It feels like an action sci-fi television show, and I enjoy action sci-fi television shows. I think I prefer television shows over the book, though, which is, I think, why I don't gravitate towards picking up the next installment. Also, although I know for many, Murderbot is a really endearing, relatable character, and I do think Murderbot's a good character study, I don't, love Murderbot that much. I mean, I don't dislike Murderbot either. I'm very neutral. Apathetic even towards Murderbot. And so I think that's what makes it hard, because it is truly like monster of the week-ish Murderbot. Like, it's like, I don't know the scenario in which Murderbot's going to be put in, but I will be following Murderbot problem solving for this story. And for my lack of connection to the character, it just hasn't been making it onto my priorities. So maybe that'll change one day, because maybe one day I'll just be like, I want to see what the fuss is about. I'm going to marathon out the rest of it. And similarly, Wayward Children. I've read one book. It was Reagan's book. It's a horse book. Can't remember the name. Across the Green Grass Fields. Does that sound right? And I know there's several others. And I have 2 Shauna Maguires on this list, because I think it's very likely that she is an author who's created one of my favorite books of all time, but is not the author for me, which is sad, because I really was hoping she'd be one of those favorite authors of all times. But this series, and I'll mention the other one, because the other one will be mentioned later, because the Wayward Children, I could see myself attempting, similarly to Murderbot, in like a project of like, let's just read all of them, see what the fuss is about, because I really have only read one of them, and I mean, it was good, but it was only okay, and I don't know, I have this feeling that that's how I would feel about each of them. And as I've said in a novella video I did earlier this year, I'm just not that good at novellas either. I'm not good at figuring out what novellas work for me and my tastes. I'm really good at short fiction, I'm really good at long fiction, but that weird medium space is hard for me. It's like I could watch a movie. Like, it takes just as much time for me to read a novella as it does to watch a movie. And normally the movie experience in comparison is more fulfilling for me. At least if I'm comparing time spent in storytelling space. So who knows? But that's a similar one where it's just one of those beloved never-ending long novella series that I feel a little like I'm missing out, but at the same time I've tried some and it's not necessarily my thing. Another darling is there's 2. So we'll talk about 2 Becky Chambers things. Becky Chambers and I, we have a weird relationship. She's a good author. I think 4 stars is the average rating I've given any of her works, but she's not like the end-all be-all of sci-fi for me. Not even the end-all be-all of social, cozy sci-fi for me. I have other things that fill that niche. And I've read 2 Wayward Children books. Not Wayward Children. Wayfair. the Wayfair series, I think. I've read two. I've read the first one and the last one, because you don't have to read them in order, and I read the last one for a Hugo project. And I really did like the last one. I was only okay with the first one. I think both are a little long, and I don't really have any interest in reading the Close and Common Orbit, and there's another one that I am blanking on. Maybe there's two other ones. I don't know. I don't really have an interest in the project of the series, mainly because I feel her theming is really heavy-handed for me, and I don't get as close to the characters as I feel a lot of my friends do. There's just a disconnect in her writing and my brain. And that is what it is. And similarly, Monk in the Robot series, which is beloved. And I don't know if it's a duology or if it's going to be those never-ending novella series, because again, this is a novella thing. There's a trend. Novellas and me, not the best of friends. And I read Monk and the Robot for my novella Hugo project, so presumably if I'm forced to read this because of the novellas for this coming year, so it will be. But in general, the theming is really loud, and it's not themes that I'm personally resonating with at the moment. You want to be told that you don't need a purpose in life? Go to grad school, and you will have all of your want to have purpose just smushed out of you, okay? I mean, that's not true. That's not every person's experience in grad school, but, like, I'm already there. I'm already at the end of the journey that character was going on in that first book, and I'm slightly intrigued by the second one, because I think it follows more the theme of making everything you do have value, and which as a content creator kind of might be closer to home. But again, it's just like all of these themes, they are delivered in a way that don't really work for me. But that said, I understand why it works for so many other people. It's just like, you know, me processing how I want to spend my time. So those are the two Becky Chambers. This next one, if somehow there's like all the reviews that say that this book is so amazing, I might read the sequel to The Marrow Thieves, but at the same time, I really liked The Marrow Thieves as a standalone. I'm nervous about where the sequel would go. It's also looked at my bookstore substantially longer, and so I would have to look at reviews. Like, as of right now, it's not a priority because I just really liked how The Marrow Thieves wrapped up. But if a lot of reviews came out being like, no, this is stellar, this is a much needed continuation, I could change my mind. And the last one is, again, it falls into that whole, like, this is the palate cleanser read that I haven't been going to when I need a palate cleanser because, again, I went to TV instead, and that is the Psy Changeling series. I've read the first 3 books. I had the 4th book on some TBRs for a while, but I just haven't gotten to it, and it's been almost 6-8 months since I last read one. I think I read Caresses of Ice back in May, or something like that. And I like them. They are fun. But when it comes to, like, romance, I get more fulfillment out of, like, Jane the Virgin or other media like that. So I haven't been called to it. And I'm still working on finding my, like, paranormal, speculative series. Like, I'm jealous of those people who have those, like, never-ending, long, serialized works like that they love all the characters, because as they get longer, you get to be more invested in the meta-arcs and all of that. But I don't necessarily think this one is the one, maybe, or I'm just not being called to it. So I'm trying to find other ones, maybe Alona Andrews, I don't know. Need to look around. I've heard a lot about Kate Daniels, but this one is at least on pause for now, just because I haven't been drawn to it, which I think is a good enough reason. So the rest of these we'll talk about. These are just not to my taste. That's all there is to it. They're very popular, some of these, so it's just like, you know, you wish you could like the things that everyone else is liking because you want to be in on the fun. But sometimes it doesn't happen, and none of that is more true than for this first one, which is Faithful and the Fallen. I read Malice earlier this year, and it was fine. That's it. It was fine. And it's 600 pages of fine. And actually, I was a little annoyed by the ending. I do have a review where I feel like I'm pretty good at going at the pros and the cons of this work. But for me, I had character connection problems. I had pacing problems. I had problems with the fact that our one female character is like such a trope. And the rest of the books are all like 700 pages. And everyone's favorite book is the 3rd book, which makes me feel like the 4th book maybe only kind of sticks the landing. I don't know. And then one of my friends who felt similarly to Malice read Valor and was like, honestly, it didn't get much better for me because everyone's like, read Valor, it's better, it's tighter, it has better writing. Because for me, there's a repetitive quality to the writing that I felt was very new author syndrome. And so, yeah, I'm just not going to continue. I'm not giving up on John Gwen. I think I'm going to wait for his current trilogy to be finished, try that one out. And then, if like I really liked how he did plot that whole thing out, I'll go back to his Banished Lands. Maybe one day. But, like, really, for right now, I have no interest in continuing on. I'd have to remind myself what happened. Yeah. Another one, that I almost decided would be on the pause list, but I still don't think it'll be for me. And it's called Starlights Shadow, but the first book was Hunt the Stars. This is a sci-fi romance. And this falls into my issue with some romances that are a little too plot heavy for my taste, if that makes sense. When I'm reading a romance, I want the character interactions and the connections and whatever found family they want to put in, I want that to be the center core. And yes, you can put plot around that, but I don't want the plot to be the core. I want the plot to be how we get to look at different scenarios in which this interaction can bloom, blossom, etc. And for this one, I just didn't really like the plot that much. And the world was fine. I liked the character interactions when I got them, but it was not enough. And it was a little long for what I got. And I'm just nervous that that's how the rest of this is going to keep going. And I don't even remember the names of any of the side characters. I think I remember the pairing for the next book, and I'm optimistic. I almost want it, because it's like a Grumpy Sunshine thing, and like, who doesn't love a good Grumpy Sunshine trope? But I just don't think necessarily she's the author for me in terms of like pairing plot and romance. This other one was also really disappointing for me, and this is The Imperial Rock. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Ancillary Justice is the first one. And I wanted to like it because everyone compared it to Nine Fox Gambit, which is one of my favorite series of all time. And I had issues. It's a revenge plot for the first book, which I didn't know, and revenge plots are really hard for me. And it was work. It was a lot of work. I was really distant from the main character, who was also pretty isolated, which are, again, not some of my favorite tropes. And so the writing style didn't connect with me. And I've actually read a short story by this author as well, and I had the same thoughts of, cool idea, I am not connecting to the story, though. And that happened in short form and long form, so I'm just thinking this author is just not for me. And then similarly to that, Foreigner. I've not given up on this author, though, because I've only read one work, but Foreigner had a lot of tropes that are not my thing, and it was a writing style that was really hard for my brain. But I do have other things I want to try out by her, because she's one of, the classic backlist sci-fi authors that I would like to try out. But this just, it had an isolated main character, it had a murder mystery plot and political intrigue, and I didn't get to focus on the things I wanted to focus on, and I think the writing style wasn't really for me. And ironically, a lot of people had warned me that the beginning of the book's actually a little harder to get into, but for me, that was my favorite part. So, go figure. Here's the other Shauna McGuire I was talking about, The Up and Under. Yeah, I'm not continuing this. I have no interest. I read the first two, and they were so average. They were so just fine. I tried physically reading it, and I tried the audiobook, and I'm already a little annoyed at the Alchemist Journals, which is not on this list, because it could redeem itself. But these are the books within the Middle Game Seasonal Fears world that everyone refers to. It's their Wizard of Oz, their Narnia, and stuff like that. And they're fine. I don't know where they're going, and they're not good complete arcs. So I don't know. Another one is Children of Time. I don't know if that's the name of the series, but I know the third book came out. So there's Children of Ruin and then Children of Memory. And I think this isn't a situation where the first book wasn't good for me. I like the first book. It's like a 4-star read. But I think I'm done with the thought experiment. I don't think I need to do more with that. And I know Children of Ruin is kind of a similar thought experiment, but with octopus. And I think they're birds for Children of Memory. I don't know. I just feel like I got what I wanted. And then ever since reading other generational books like this, like Symbiosis, it's like, this is just so long for what it's doing for me and my taste. So I don't think I'll continue with that. One that I really actually didn't like the book of is Shadows of the Short Days. I had an issue with this. I do want to put it on the radar of people who like grimdark. This was grimdark, and I wasn't expecting grimdark. I was expecting contemporary rebellion fantasy, which it still is, but with very grimdark characters. This takes place in Iceland, and actually, if you want a book with some really cool incorporation of Iceland mythology, that's here in spades. I really actually like a lot of the world building, and I liked the contemporary rebellion setting. I just hated our two main characters, and part of that is because I wasn't prepared to have such unlikable characters. Like I said, I didn't go into this expecting that, and they really were. Like, one of them, it's like, oh, you're just making such dumb decisions all the time, and like, I didn't like that. And then the other one, I can't say what they did because it's a spoiler, but basically from that moment he did a thing. It's like 30% of the way through. I was just like, no redemption arc for you. And he didn't. And I don't really even know what happened at the end, and there is a second book. I don't know what we're doing. So yeah, it was a problem of it just being too much work, and then I didn't have character connection anymore. So it's not for me. Even though I assume the second book might be doing something a little different, maybe just in the same world. Like I said, I was not expecting this to become a series after finishing the first book. Next up, we've got Fabled Fables, which was The Spindled Splintered was the first book. I liked it as it was. It was fun for the moment in which I read it, and I've not heard things about A Mirror Mended that make me want to pick it up, so I'm not going to. The next one I will not be continuing with is the Blood Gift duology, where Blood Trials is the first book. It wasn't for me. I don't like the main character. It's first-person point of view. And it's also kind of like rebellion fantasy, and I've been really burnt out on rebellion fantasy. It has to be done so well for me to like it right now. I'm just so jaded. But in this case, it was purely just a main character disconnect for me. I just couldn't get on with her, truly. And then we've got Wolves of No World. So this is the first book is Lobezona. And I really liked Lobezona for what it was, although it did have some plot conveniences that I didn't truly love. And I think what I've kind of learned is I need to read more young adult contemporary and get out of fantasy, because I loved the contemporary moments, but the minute we go into the fantasy moments, I was less enthralled. Even when it was in a magic school setting, which, you know, is kind of bread and butter, it also had a few too many Harry Potter references for my liking, like even ignoring what's been happening with that author lately again. But it's just really hard to have a pop culture reference show up so many times when I'm reading a book that's meant to be in a faraway land at some point. It's just like, I get it. You're in a magic school setting. You're trying to contextualize this for yourself. I get it. Why are we doing this so many times? So that was a little annoying to me, and technically I should want the other book. But I don't. I feel like I got what I wanted from this one, and I don't know if the second book ends in a very good place. Like, I know technically now it's a duology, but I hear so many people being like, man, I want the third book, and I know there's not a third book coming. So I don't really want to pick that up. The next one we're going to talk about was actually on my worst of the year video, and that was The Genesis of Misery, mainly because I just really didn't like that book. So I really wanted to put on my worst of the year, but obviously because I didn't like it that much, I will not be continuing. Although it's really confusing because it is going to have a sequel, but it's not like marketed with its series name, and it's not going to be out for, I think, 2 or 3 years or something like that. But regardless, I'm not going to keep going. And then the last one I'll mention that I read this year, this is another one of those palette cleanser series, and this is the Noodle Shop mystery. I'm just, of the 3 cozy mysteries I tried, this is the one I'm least interested in continuing with. So those are all the things, and I believe there's at least one HarperCollins title on here. There might be more. I don't know the publishers for a lot of things, so I know I had one Harper Voyager on this list, which is HarperCollins. And so just as a heads up, the strike is still happening. You should still be following them on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you want. Sign the form, it's free. If you can donate. Like, they're literally asking their publisher for a contract that's like the bare minimum of just a fair living wage for New York City, where they are forced to live to go to work. It's truly not that remarkable. Like, I can't understand why a company making profits the way that they are can't rationalize that. It's just unfortunate. So just keep that on your radar. I'll have links to Jess's video and the hashtags for their Instagram and Twitter down below. And yeah, that's it for this video. You can try to convince me to continue any of these. I probably won't listen. I'm pretty set in my ways when it comes to DNFing series. And usually at this point, you know, like a lot of these I've had a chance to continue on with them for months. Like, I thought for a long time I would continue Malice. Like, I thought I would pick up Valor. And I never did. Like, I once downloaded it onto my Kindle, and I just know my taste when it comes to DNFing series. Time is too short. So, if you want to leave an emoji, I don't know if there's really any theme for this one. So let's just do a robot for Murderbot. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.